Hey guys, I'm Laura Munkholm, founder and president of Walla, and I'm excited to have John Hartman with us today. He's the founder and CEO of Skillpower, and he's really the one that brought the concept of motivation, personality, typology, and habit building to us here at Walla, and why we've incorporated it into our product. So without further ado, thanks for being with us, John.
Thanks, Laura. Great to be here.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about Skillpower and how the platform works.
Yeah, absolutely. So there, at a high level, there are two key components to the Skillpower software, with our overall goal of helping people accomplish goals over the long term, right? That's the real important thing. We all start fitness goals, health goals, nutrition goals. And it's easy to do for a couple of weeks, but it's really hard to do over the long term. And so what our platform does is focus on two key pillars of creating that success. First is the habit building skills that help people to be consistent with meeting their goals over the long term. And then the second is a personality typology model that is focused on where people's motivation comes from, so that the person, and plus the folks that work at a studio or a gym, can better understand with the individuals they're interacting with where their motivation comes from. Does it come from the outside, the inside, and how does it work? Because a lot of this is driven by our different personality types.
Right. Okay. That makes total sense. I know it's a very popular topic, and there is a lot of influencer content, YouTube videos, tons of books on habit building. And I'm sure you've looked through all of that and worked with researchers. What have you learned, and what is Skillpower's approach?
Yeah, absolutely. This is where it gets interesting and really valuable. So we've looked at just tons of the university research, right? So we look at the white papers, the peer-reviewed papers. We're partnering with various universities, and we've also done some work with the United States Air Force and the Army, and we're very research-based. And it's tricky for consumers, I find, because it's so easy to look at social media and see somebody who says, all you have to do is this, and you'll run a marathon, or you'll accomplish your nutrition goal or health goal. And for a lot of us, it's challenging because that seems really easy, right? But then when we go try and do it, it doesn't work. And one of the reasons is when you look at the research, nothing is a silver bullet. Right? This is just sort of the fact of the matter. The research shows that there are quite a lot of techniques that people can do to better enable them to reach their goals over the long term. Let's use some round numbers today. Let's say there are about 20 of them, but none of them are a silver bullet. Each of them work for some people in some situations, but they don't work for everybody in every situation. So when we, talk to our coworker or our sibling or our significant other, something that may have worked for them might not work for me or work for you. So what the critical, important takeaway here is that learning how to accomplish a goal over the long term is a little bit of a process of trial and error. And people kind of have to know that and have a growth mindset. This is, one of the key pillars. You have to be able to go through a couple of the habit building skills and say, hey, this one works for me, but this one doesn't work for me. And, continue to move on in that learning process and that self-awareness process. So that's what you don't hear, from a lot of the social media content or the articles out there, that some things work for some people and not others.
Okay, so what's an example of something that works for some but not for others? Yeah, talk us through a little more detail there.
Absolutely. And let me give you a great kind of common example, right? So let's use some simple examples. Somebody who wants to run their first 10K. So not a marathon, not a half marathon, kind of a doable goal, wants to run their first 10K. And if you look around at whether that's some social media content or an article or magazine, one of the key things they'll say is join a running group or join a running club. And that's a great idea, right? It sounds very logical. If you haven't done this before, join a running group. Now let's peel back and look at the research that will tell you if you join a running group, you'll increase the chances of completing your 10K, right? Doing your 3 months of training and showing up for the event. When you look at the university research, this is how it works. They have a control group, let's say 100 people, and they say, hey, 100 people who've never run a 10K, go try and run a 10K. And then they take another 100 people and they say, hey, join the running club. and then go try and run a 10K. How the research often pans out, again, in sort of round numbers, is that a control group that isn't doing anything, 100 of them try, let's say 25 of them complete the process, train for 3 months, and go run a 10K. That group that joined the running club, it's not uncommon for results to say 35 of them completed the process and ran a 10K. So that's much more than 25. In fact, it's almost a 50% increase. But what you don't see is that 65 people didn't finish the process and run the 10K. But the takeaway in kind of the press is join a running club and you'll increase your chances of, accomplishing your goal. So that's kind of the first takeaway, is it's not a silver bullet. But then the reasons why it doesn't work for some people can be surprising. A running club is great in the behavior change, habit building world. It's that external motivation, right? It's a social experience. There are people there, they're helpful. And for some people who are externally motivated, that's perfect. That's what they need. But let's break down just a little bit of some of the other personality types. First off, some people are not externally motivated. They are internally motivated, and they're driven by research. People who are internally motivated often have a strong correlation with, they do lots of research, and they may find a running plan, right? There are lots of running plans. Do this week 1, do this week 2, do this week 3. And they're perfectly social. They may join the running club, but the running club is not following the plan that they determine to be the best plan. So that's going to create a conflict for them, right? Other folks, what we call the doers, maybe have external motivation and internal motivation, but they are often highly structured, right? They don't like things to be flexible. So if the running club says it's going to start at 9, and they often start at 9:15 or 9:20, that's really going to bother this personality type, and they probably will, stop going. So that's just sort of a simple example of how the research works, and it does help, but it doesn't help everybody. And so people have to do some trial and error and have that self-awareness of where their motivation comes from.
Absolutely. That makes total sense, especially in the fitness world. You mentioned the second pillar is motivation and kind of that personality type, that typology. A lot of our clients are very interested in, and not just our clients, their clients are very interested in the personality typology. Where does that come from? How did you come up with this?
Yeah, so fascinating, and this bunny hole goes deep, but we'll cover the basics today. Researchers have been researching for decades, where do personality typologies come from? And what I'll tell you today is the latest thoughts, but also know that it's ongoing research that in 10 years from now, they'll probably understand better. Because the debate has always been, are we born with it, or is it something we learn, right? Nature versus nurture. And what today's research shows is that kind of everybody's right on that. About 50% of it, we do believe that we're born with, and it's how the wiring in our brain works in all sorts of facets, right? Like, how does our dopamine, our serotonin, our adrenaline, like all those things happen in the brain? How are we born? How is our brain wired? And then the research also shows that the other roughly half of it does come from our childhood experiences and the way that we were raised and the environment that we were in. Up into about the age of 10 is a real high impact area. And so that's the latest research, that it's about 50% we're born with and 50% that we end up with as a result of kind of our childhood behaviors. And the final thing I'll say about it is what the research also shows is that it can kind of ebb and flow. Like it's how we act most of the time. It's like everything else. It's not a silver bullet just to say you're this personality typology, you will always act like that. What that really means is that's how you will usually act, right? And getting a self-awareness about it really is one of the best steps in kind of controlling it and using it to your advantage and understanding where the blind spots are.
Okay. Yeah, that's really helpful. I think a lot of people want to know where our personalities come from, but also how we can leverage that information in the studio. So talk us through how our instructors or front desk staff can use personality types to support and motivate the people that walk through the doors of the studio.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the key things to know about the Skillpower platform is when we think about personality typologies, we've all kind of heard of that somewhere. Like a lot of times it's in the workplace, or it's like a leadership style or a communication style. So there are different aspects of our personality that have a typology. And what Skillpower has done is look specifically at the aspects that have to do with motivation and accomplishing goals over the long term. So we'll get into some of the specifics of the different personalities, but for example, some people are externally motivated. That's kind of where their energy source comes from. Other people are really internally motivated, self-starters. Other people have a mix of the two. And then interestingly enough, some people have kind of neither. They're not sort of motivated by other people or themselves. It's sort of, a third topic that they get motivated by. But a really great example of this that we have studied at the early stages of Skillpower is the simple compliment, right? So when we think about let's just use a yoga studio, for example, it's pretty common to say something like, hey, great job today. You really crushed it. That's such a normal thing to say and sounds like such a great thing that we would always say, right?
And I think we encourage people a lot to say
We encourage people to say that. But what is this is like the first step of learning about personality typology that's so interesting is that roughly about 40 to 50% of people, when they hear that comment, great job today, you really crushed it, it has its intended effect. They're like, ooh, thanks. I love it. Warm and fuzzy. I feel great from that. What's surprising for people to hear is that about 25% of people, it has no impact on. They're kind of neutral to it. They're like, okay. And one of the reasons, for example, and that is they're internally motivated. That's where their motivation comes from. So they don't mind the compliment, but it doesn't have the big impact on them.
Right.
And then there's another set of people, and there's overlapping with some different typologies here, where it actually rubs them the wrong way, quite frankly. And that can actually be for 2 or 3 reasons. One is motivation that comes from the inside, and they didn't believe that they had a good class. They had a particular goal they were trying to accomplish, and they didn't accomplish it. And so you're in conflict with their own self-assessment of what's going on, right? Okay. And then there's another personality typology where they would find compliments kind of patronizing or annoying. And this is shown in research over and over and over.
Oh, that's so interesting. I've definitely noticed people respond differently to compliments and never really understood why. I just figured everybody's different. But what are some other key things about personality typology that we should know in the studio setting?
Yeah, absolutely. So, our goal with working with Walla is to increase, retention and satisfaction rates. Like we all want to help everybody meet their goals, right? So we're going to, dig deeper into some of the typologies and how we can help people accomplish their goals. But the important 2 or 3 things to share with everybody is, of course, as I mentioned earlier, none of this is a silver bullet, right? Even though we have personality typologies, people still have moods, right? They have bad days and good days, or they're running late, or, something happened earlier in the day that you may have a good relationship with that person and know their typology and some of the hints that we have in this program. But, if they didn't get a good night's sleep the previous night, that may overrule what their typology is. So you got to keep that in mind. It's not a silver bullet. And what we're really trying to do here is to move the needle, right? Let's use some round numbers. Let's say you have a 50% retention rate, because that's just an easy number, for us to use. Our goal here, and think of it, you connect with people in a meaningful way 50% of the time. Our goal is to move that number to 60 or 70%. It's never going to work 100% of the time. But if we can, connect with people 10 or 20% more times in a meaningful way, then we're gonna just be in a better place for everybody. So that's the goal.
Right. Yeah, and we all know the impact of increasing retention by a small percent makes a big difference on the bottom line.
Over here, yeah.
Okay, great. So last question, tell us at a high level about the 4 personality types in your research, and then we guys will be creating a more detailed video for each one, but this is just to kind of give us a high level overview.
Absolutely. Let's go through them. So 4 of them. So the first one are the givers. And this is the most common one. It's 40% of the population. And these are individuals who are motivated externally by other people. They love compliments and they get their energy from other people. The challenge for givers is that they typically put other people as the priority over themselves. right? And so these are the people who are kind of too busy to work out because they're doing things for other people. And so we just have to dig into that and figure out how to make that work for the givers. The thinkers are in some ways the opposite, in the sense that their motivation comes from the inside. They are internally motivated. They're very social. It doesn't mean that they're not social and don't like interacting with other people, but they're motivated internally. And the big correlation with these individuals is they tend to overthink things. They do tons of research about, what exercise to do, what gym to go to, what class to take, and they can have analysis paralysis from them. Then we have the doers, who are the combination. They can be motivated by external sources or by internal sources. They can do either, and they're very good at that. But the one thing to know about the thinkers is they are only successful in that in a highly structured environment. They love schedules, they love to-do lists, and they don't like it when things are kind of fluid and last minute. And the final one is the mavericks. And mavericks are the rebellious personality type. And so it's a little tricky because they're not motivated externally by other people, and they're actually not motivated internally by themselves either. They have a rebellious, independent, free-spirited mindset. And where they get their motivation from is tying things to activities or hobbies that they love. And so you have to kind of connect. You're here to kind of get in better shape so that you can do X, this activity that you really love. So those are the four big ones.
Right. The trickiest group to maybe communicate with are the mavericks.
Yeah. Once you know who they are, you can do it, but it's not obvious.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for giving us this high-level overview. I think it's going to help everybody kind of get an understanding for how they can leverage the program. And everyone on here, stay tuned for some deeper dives. Thanks, John.
Thanks.